Here we are.
We're back, man. That was just in time. I stepped on my mic cord just as we were starting.
Hell yeah!
I got it back in there.
Good.
Very
I'm
quick.
in. By the way, in this, I have a beautiful view of Bricktown, the Bricktown neighborhood of Oklahoma City right now. I'm not in the obvious podcast studio, and I'm like you right now. I'm holding my microphone.
People who have been to Oklahoma City say it's not terrible. But
yeah, I would agree with that. It to me, I'll tell you what I might say this on stage tonight, but to me, it reminds me of a town where they like really thought this was going to become a big deal. Like the town is built. There's like a lot of cool big buildings, and then there's just parking everywhere available. It's great.
Yeah, they tried to get all sorts of teams there, and they got one, but fuck them for that. So
yeah, I'm going to start out with this. We're going to address this right away. Nick Lindsay, you get extra podcasts because we're starting early. And we've said it the whole time. This is a variable start time podcast. We have children. I'm in Oklahoma City. Alex has drugs to sell. We have to start when we can start. Anyway, I did. By the way,
it's nice that people care.
It is true. Yeah, that is nice to have people interacting, even if it's negatively. And to answer your question, will you get booed if you walk on stage with that Sonics hat? I did it yesterday. Did not get booed. I do have a joke written for tonight that we'll see if it gets any laughs, which is they keep telling me, they're like, it's daring to wear that hat here. And I'm like, why is it daring? You took our team. I didn't take your team. Like, you guys should be sympathetic. You should be kissing my ass because I'm wearing this hat.
Yeah,
anyway.
It's a special place for all of us, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I have no desire to go there. So, good luck.
I
know you've been there many times. This is not your first time to Oklahoma City.
Sure. Yeah, I like it. But it's one of those things like most places that have a comedy club are also like pretty decent towns that have a bunch of other shit. So they have like Oklahoma City is like, there's like quite a bit of diversity, a lot of different kinds of food and shit. And that's like, if you're visiting, that's what you want, is you want like to be able to experience Oklahoma City as it's meant to be experienced. I'm going to Dallas tomorrow with my buddy Gabriel Rutledge we're just going to visit our friend Josh Firestein, who moved down there last year, and that'll be fun too because we're going to try to check out a couple barbecue places down there. And that's like, I mean, I've realized that most of my travel at this age is like food related, or most of it's comedy related. But when I think of a place to go on vacation, it's food related.
Yeah, I totally understand that. That's. I don't know that for preaching to the crowd here. I don't think that's applicable to everybody in our age demographic. I think we might be bigger than most people. I don't know. It's a real thing with food. But yeah, here we are.
We're also
we have
fat. This helps too.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. We have a lot to talk about today.
We do. We should start off though with the somber note, because we do have a somber note, and we pledge to each other.
We should do
to start out with that, because it's the most. And very often on this podcast, I will go into a long, drawn out preamble to misdirect to something that's like supposed to be funny. In this case, I promise you that is not it. A beloved local journalist passed away unexpectedly, and so it's Matt Driscoll. Tell us about your experience with Matt Driscoll, Alex, if you would.
Well, yeah, I mean, for people who don't know Matt, he was a Tacoma News Tribune columnist, and we're both Tacoma people, so if you are a Tacoma person, you probably know of Matt at least, even if you don't let's be honest, a lot of people aren't picking up a hard copy of the newspaper and reading it. But
dude, have you done that, by the way? It's like 4 pages long. It's like a pamphlet now.
There's not much in there anymore. Yeah. But Matt was he had a good online presence too. He was all over Twitter and all sorts of social media. But anytime you're a journalist or a columnist, you can potentially be a lightning rod for controversy, especially. I mean, that's the nature of that job. But Matt was pretty much universally beloved by a lot of people here in Tacoma, and just 43 years old. And last Sunday, he it looked like, I mean, from what I could see on his Twitter, he had a pretty good day, enjoying some of the festivities around Tacoma, and then apparently later that night unexpectedly passed away. So he has three children, 3 young kids, a wife at home, and just it's a tragedy, man. I mean, anytime you lose somebody who really stands up for a city like Tacoma that is always going to live in the shadow of Seattle, right?
Sure.
And Matt did everything he could to be just like a representative for this city that anyone who lived here would be proud of. And yeah, so it's a huge loss, and obviously very young at
Yeah.
just 43 years old.
And I'll say this: first off, I think that if he passed away on Sunday, I looked at his Twitter account also, and it was Porch Fest was Saturday. So it's and that's the last thing that he posted about. And one thing that I want to say is I've like done like Twitter searches, whatever, to see what was going on, and so Matt Driscoll took over a part of we had another beloved Tacoma writer pass away, Sue Kidd, a couple years ago. Pseudonym Sue Kidd, by the way, like it's a pen name. But there was like a great local journalist, food blogger, food reviewer, and Matt Driscoll was like the last remaining. I felt like kind of like the heart of the Tacoma culture. And he also, I wasn't aware of the fact that people hated him for this. He was also like critical of Aaron Rodgers, apparently. Like, dude, he passes away, and like the first thing you see is like, well, I guess he owes Aaron Rodgers an apology, or all that. And it's like the same way when you walk into a place and you see people wearing like N95 masks, and you're like, we're still doing this. When a person dies tragically and leaves a family behind, and the social media reaction of some people is, "Oh, was he vaxxed? Like, are we still doing that too? Just fucking have some
honestly,
compassion."
I feel like I know a lot of people who know Matt, and I didn't see any of that. Which if you want to
Well,
go,
sure,
dig
these
for
aren't
it,
people
I
that
mean,
know him, but
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not because he's a public figure. You get like the disgusting reach of
yeah.
the
I
reactions to
mean,
his death from people who did not know him.
yeah. I mean, to me, it's like I don't even pay attention to that stuff anymore. People can react
Sure.
however they want. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like if this is some guy who's not necessarily to some degree is a public figure, but not to
Well,
the
he's not
degree that you'd
famous, but he's
expect.
definitely a
Right,
public
exactly.
figure.
What I'm saying is like if that's how people are reacting, that's how they're going to react. There's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah,
But the thing about Matt was he kind of started out at least publicly as a Seattle Weekly writer many
sure.
years ago, and kind of worked his way up to the News Tribune. And that's a grind, man. I worked in journalism a long time ago, and just sticking with it at that level. Working for a weekly like Seattle Weekly, and then getting to a full-time daily paper, it takes a lot just to get to that point. And so I respect anybody who went through that. And then on top of that, he was a really good writer. I mean, he's just a solid writer. And my personal experience with him that I shared online is, man, about like 10 years ago, maybe even more than that now, he wanted to do this story on like Seattle Twitter personalities. I don't know why. This is when he was at Seattle
This is a
Weekly.
knock against Matt Driscoll, if we're being
Yeah,
honest.
he was a big sports fan though. He was a Denver Broncos fan, and obviously liked the local teams as well, and big fan of the Rainiers and everything like that. But he wanted to do this story on Twitter personalities, and he reached out to me, and of course I told him yes, and we had a conversation by phone. And I remember I got off work and I was like driving to a Mariner game or something. So I was in the car the whole time on Bluetooth, which has to be the most annoying way to have a conversation with somebody. It's like all you hear is like the road noise behind you. So like I felt bad about that. It's just like I didn't have time to just like sit and like be somewhere to take this call. And we ended up talking for quite a while. And I was in a bad place, man. I was going through my own shit at that point in time. And I remember that day I wasn't like in the best. I was not a great interview that day, to be
Sure.
honest. And I remember Matt asking me like what I thought was funny, like what type of Twitter personalities I thought were funny. And I was like, I don't think that there are that many that are that funny, which I still believe that to some degree.
Another
Like,
option you could have said was Casey McLean. I just would like to put that out there.
Sorry, my bad. It might have even predated when we knew each other. I'm not sure. But
That's a good out.
yeah, it's a good out. Although you could easily go search the article and see if I'm telling the truth or not.
I'm sure it was after we knew each other.
But yeah, it wasn't a great interview, and I knew that I was kind of the focal point of whatever this thing was that he was writing. And I just remember when he wrote it and when it came out, it made me look great,
Mm-hmm.
and that was like, that's the kind of thing that a journalist a really good journalist can do. You know, take something that might not be the best that an interviewee gives you and actually turn it into something really impressive. And so I always really appreciated him for that. We stayed in touch on online, and I didn't. I it's funny because I never met him in person, but we're in this age where it's like, you know, people very well who you've never met in person through social media or whatever.
Yeah, that's
Even
true.
like you think about like people you might work with, you know, for a lot of people who have remote jobs, it's like I know people I work with very, very well. I've never seen them face to face. So, you know, Matt was one of those guys that to me was just he deserved all the respect and the accolades he got. He was really good at what he did. He worked in a thankless business in journalism as a columnist for, you know, what you could argue is maybe the number two paper in this region behind the Seattle Times.
Hmm.
So, you know, you're always going to be living in someone else's shadow. And he did his job extremely, very, very well. And there's a GoFundMe out there for his family now, which, you know, I put out the link a couple times, but pretty easy to find. I think the News Tribune has it as well. In like 24 hours, they raised over $100,000 for his family, which is
Yeah.
remarkable.
Well, and if you see that and you think like, oh, they reached the goal, I don't need to donate. And obviously, I mean, GoFundMe's are a complicated thing. But if you think that because they raised $100,000, that obviously the family is going to be going through a lot, and then even just like lost income is going to be significantly more than $100,000. So I wouldn't hesitate to donate just because they hit the original goal of
Yeah.
$100,000.
No,
And I
absolutely.
mean,
Keep going. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, you know, leaves I believe two kids behind.
Three
And
three
yeah, just
kids, and
three kids.
his
Oh my god.
his his oldest is special needs. So a lot of the money that's being raised, or at least was raised initially through this GoFundMe,
Sure.
was to help for their care, you know, for care
Yeah.
for his oldest. So yeah, if you can help, please do. Obviously, we live in this age where people are always asking for money, so totally understand if that's not something that can be done. But you know, regardless of donation or anything like that, like Matt was a really good dude, and
Yep.
he's gonna be missed in Tacoma for sure. And yeah, all the best to his family.
Yeah. Real quickly before we move on to the next topic, I need to get a new water. I'm going to turn my camera off because I'm in my hotel room. I'm in boxers right now, and I can't give the full view
That's
to
too
the.
much. Okay, I
All
can
right.
set our topics
All
for
right. You
today.
set it up.
Obviously, yeah, we have like I said, we got a lot to talk about today, and thankfully, the Mariners did everything they could to change the narrative of how we were going to discuss them today. Because up until yesterday evening, this was going to be more of a vent fest, I think, than anything else with the Mariners, and they go out and they make a big trade and change that whole narrative. We'll start there. We've got a couple other topics that we can get to later on, but obviously the big one, especially for people around here, is the Seattle Mariners.
Yeah, and I guess so. Like Randy Arozarena is who they trade for. Tampa Bay Rays outfielder, who a couple years ago was like taking over. He was like a spark plug for the Rays, and like it seemed like he was going to become a star. It seemed like he was going to become a star, and then he's played very well. He's been a very good player, but never really
Yeah.
ascended to like that star level that we've seen a lot of like Rays obscure players go up to, and then and this year he's struggling. And I'm curious because to me, I expected to see a lot more dissent on this than I saw on Twitter, and I didn't like search
Yeah.
very closely. I want to read this one tweet that I found just remarkably annoying that I included in our notes, by the way. It was, and I think this guy is Jared Carabas. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah,
This is
he's a
like a dude
national
who
baseball guy.
he could be
Yeah.
a guy that like because I just don't follow the like I'm not annoyed by baseball writers enough. This could be one of these guys that's super annoying all the time. But he said the Mariners' offense is dreadful at every position. Randy Arozarena is only one guy. Not sure he alone can change what's been one of the worst offenses in baseball. Surely he can help, but one man alone is not saving Seattle from being able to score or from not being able to score runs. They need more. Okay. The thing that annoys me about this is he could have had this tweet in drafts, just waiting to put in the name of the first
Yeah.
person they traded
Yeah.
for. You can't trade for a whole new offense in one trade. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Like this is
Yeah.
it's an unrealistic expectation he had of that is, and I'm sure there's people out there. First off, a Rosarena is not a household name. He's like I said, he was
I would
in like
say he's in baseball. He probably is. Now I get it. Like, I mean, you could argue that there's not really any household names in baseball. Like, you might be able to find people who
sure,
aren't baseball fans that know Shohei Ohtani, maybe know Mike Trout, but after that, I mean, yeah, there aren't really any. If you're a perennial All Star, if you're a guy who's been going to the All Star game, he won the home run derby in Seattle last year. He's as close to a household name in baseball as it gets at this point. But I would say that Arozarena, first of all, to address that tweet, yes, that I've been very annoyed with those people as well. I've heard a lot of the initial reaction since this trade went down about, oh man, 15 hours ago. My overall reaction, I'll start out by saying, is very positive. I think this is a great pickup for the Mariners. If you, for whatever reason, think this is a bad pickup, I don't think you're a serious baseball fan, because we know
sure,
what they gave up to get this guy. It's none of their top 10 prospects. The two guys they give up and the player to be named, probably not in the top 10. We don't know about the player to be named yet. But they gave up less than what you would expect a team to give up for a guy of Arozarena's stature.
sure.
So in that
Let me make
regard,
one correction. They gave up Brody Hopkins was the Fangraphs 7th rated prospect, so still not in
Fangraphs
that like
always has, yeah, they always have a different take than everybody else. But
sure. And I can look at the other lists, but that's the one that I value the most. And
yeah,
but my point is like it's still not in that like it's still a tier down from their top prospects.
yeah. Well, and here's the thing with the Rosarena. I mean, the point that was being made in that Carabas tweet, and that I've heard from a lot of people, is obviously one Randy Rosarena is not going to change this entire Mariners offense. That would be impossible for any one person to do. You could
Yeah,
go get the best hitter on the planet. They're not, Shohei Ohtani's not changing this lineup. But
sure.
you have to start somewhere. And,
Right.
to the Mariners' credit, not only did they really kind of jumpstart this trade market in a way. We've seen a couple other trades today as well that have really kind of seems like things are starting to take off now that the Mariners kind of broke the seal and made a big move for Rosarena. It's kind of opened things up for all the teams. So they go out and they kind of jump everybody, get a big name. They did this a couple years ago with Luis Castillo on the pitching side. We know that they kind of jumped the market there, got Castillo before the flurry of trades began up to the deadline. And the problem is when they made that deal for Castillo, they really didn't do much else after that. So to the Mariners' credit today, there's been at least rumors from reporters out there that the Mariners are staying active, still looking for another bat and looking for another a relief pitcher, which are all things that they need. We know that. I mean, at least one other bat would be helpful. The fact they didn't give up any of their biggest name prospect, the guys that we've talked about, that other people have talked about, Colt Emerson, Cole Young, Harry Ford, guys like that. They didn't give up any of those big names, so they still have those guys in house to be able to go pick up a really big name bat if they want to. So it gives them a lot of flexibility in the next couple of days before the deadline hits. And frankly, yes, if they don't make any other moves for any other hitters, then this deadline was probably not the success we thought it might be last night when that deal was made. So they have to compound this with some other moves. But for starters, this is about as good as it
against
gets.
that slightly because we're going to talk about the future of the front office today, and that's if I'm and we're going to talk about it in more detail. But if I'm John Stanton and if I'm like deciding what I'm going to let Jerry Dipoto do, being hopefully a lame duck GM. You and I both hope that he's a lame duck GM. I'm not letting him go and trade the whole farm system, frankly, and also especially like this team has collapsed in recent weeks. I don't see any reason at this point, and it's been 2 weeks since you and I have talked, and the Mariners arguably could not have been worse in the last 2 weeks. There's like no reason to believe this team at this point has a deep postseason run in them. And I made the argument last time.
Yeah.
This pitching staff is not actually historically good. They're very good. They are very good, but they're not like historically incredible. I think you have to now. I said it then when they had a better record, but now when your playoff odds are this much lower, and there's a much greater chance that whatever you do is going to lead to a team that does not make the playoffs and also doesn't have a great farm system. Randy Rosarena is controllable, I think, through 2027, I believe.
26. He's a free agent in
Is it
27.
26? Free agent 27.
Yeah.
Okay, but still, you're like
Yeah. So you got
multiple
2.5
years of
more
team
years.
control. So
Yeah.
that is the only kind of player I'm letting Jerry Dipoto go get, is a guy who you can control beyond 2024.
Yeah.
Personally.
I mean, I get it. I think Seattle fans are so sensitive to this subject because of the Eric Bedard trade. And we have to remember that the Eric Bedard trade
I don't care about the Eric Bedard trade.
I don't think we'd have as strong an opinion on this if we hadn't been burned so badly.
But they
before.
did the Cliff Lee trade right after that. Like that's not.
It was a year later. I mean, it was the Bedard trade.
That's what I mean.
Was the end of. But here's where this timeline's important. The Bedard trade was the end of the Bavasi era. The Bavasi era was, I have to go get this pitcher at all costs because this is my final year no matter what. Where the Cliff Lee trade, I believe, was the next regime because Bavasi gets himself fired in the middle of that season that they acquire Bedard. So there's a big difference in those two trades because the trade that comes with a brand new regime, they're not getting fired anytime soon. So they can freely make that deal and not have to worry about the ramifications. But that Bedard trade, I feel like we've been worried about the second coming of that Bedard trade with every trade that's been made ever since over the past 15 years. This was so long ago now. We have to get over that. I get what you're saying. I mean, the Mariners love to acquire these guys that have control, whether it be club control like a Rosarena, or even if it's just a contract that they've signed that, you know, is team friendly, more or less. That's always been their MO. So, you know, in a lot of ways, Randy Rosarena makes a ton of sense because of that.
You know who he reminds me of actually from like a, I don't know that his, actually, I don't even think his profile is that unfavorable to this guy. It reminds me of the trade that brought Mitch Haniger here. Obviously, they traded major leaguers over there, but it's like they traded valuable, but not like franchise-altering pieces, so they thought anyway. Although Kettle Marte has done really a lot to make that untrue. But it's, I think it's a trade that you would have been frustrated by a couple weeks ago if that was the thing. And now it kind of feels like it's the best hedge I could have imagined available to them at this point. And I think they're at a point where they have to hedge because you go trade for, I'm saying like, there's not a realistic scenario where they trade for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and someone else important. Like that's it. That's the one guy you're going to get. That's my opinion. You're going to have to give up a huge chunk. Maybe you get another medium tier guy. But if you go do that, that's it. And again, I think you get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on this team, I think it doesn't impact their playoff odds that much.
Yeah, I'm sensitive to your plight because I know you are prospect.
Well, what do you think they should do then? Because you keep poo-pooing what I'm saying, but have a take then.
Well, okay, so let's take a step back, man. First of all, I want to get your initial reaction. As soon as you heard about this trade, I don't want to think about the contract. Don't think about the prospects. Don't think about anything else. The first thing we found out when this trade happened was that the Mariners were acquiring Randy Rosarena, and that was it. So we didn't know anything else. So our thoughts couldn't be, couldn't go anywhere else. What were your thoughts when you heard the Mariners were acquiring Randy Rosarena?
I'm happy about it. He's a guy that I like. Yes. He's an athletic, solid hitting. He's not a great defender, but a good enough defender to he can exist in your lineup, exist in your outfield. I have no beef with it. I actually was worried when I looked it up that he was like gonna be a free agent after this year, and to find out that if they had given up what they gave up and he was going to be a free agent after this year, I wouldn't have been as happy about it. But the fact that he has 2.5 years of team control was enough for me to be like, I know this is I was happy with it before knowing that information, to answer your question as directly as possible. And then when you factor in, they didn't give up any of the top guys. I think a Rosarena has a very good chance to perform. And we did this when we talked about the alternatives to Vlad. I think a Rosarena in 2024 has a very strong chance of equaling Vlad Guerrero's performance the remainder of 2024. He's older than him. So if you keep him long-term, you have 2.5 more years. But if you keep him long-term, there's a chance you don't get the same return as getting a younger guy early in his career. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's like, to me, it seemed like a win-win. It's like you didn't give up a ton, and he's a good player that can actually play defense. You have to. There's like, Vlad is not going to play a valuable defensive position, and He's going to cost a ton, both in trade compensation, and you're probably going to have to extend him for a huge amount of money. And then he's also like, there's a lot of question marks around Vlad that I'm not comfortable with trading a bunch of prospects for.
Yeah, to take it back to the original question, I felt the same way. I mean, I think the immediate reaction to finding out you picked up a guy like Randy Arozarena is very positive. And I don't, if even when you find out the return, I feel like it remains positive because, there's going to be people out there, the people that on Facebook groups and on Twitter will always propose those trades that are like, what if we take like our 30 worst guys at AA and offer them to the Angels for Mike Trout? Do you think
what if we trade the
entire
entire city of Everett?
those people are going to be mad about every trade because they don't want to give anything up and get anything in return. They don't understand how bartering as a whole works. So there's going to be people who are upset, of course, but the vast majority of people, I feel like, were good with an Arozarena trade because of a number of things. I mean, one, he's been a very productive major leaguer. I think that our impression of Arozarena has always been higher than what he's actually done. So that's, I don't know if you want to call that a knock against him or what, but his public consciousness, he came to the public consciousness in 2020 in the postseason. No one had ever heard of this guy prior to that. And then he just erupts in the 2020 postseason and everybody saw it because COVID. So that's all we had to do was watch the baseball playoffs, right? So everybody saw this happen. So it made him this overnight superstar where, in a normal season, maybe a guy who even performs that well in the playoffs doesn't have that many eyes on him, right? And so we've known this guy to be maybe larger than life as far as his numbers would indicate for a number of years now. There's a lot to like about him. I mean, obviously he's productive and, all of his numbers, even for as much as he struggled early in this season, and we know he's picked it up late. I mean, if you can go look at his numbers for the last 2 months, they're pretty good. But
can I give you some encouraging numbers and then temper them a little bit?
Yes, go ahead.
So by expected weighted on base average, it's a StatCast stat that's basically like a combination of speed and like how well he's hitting the ball. He's like he would be the 30th best hitter with neutral luck in baseball. Easily better than any Mariners hitter at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah. And the guy that I would quantify, or a way that I would quantify that luck, he has, I think it's the 58th. No, he would be let me rephrase this. 58th best hitter, 30th worst luck in baseball. He has the biggest gap between his actual weighted on base and his expected weighted on base. So like the expected weighted on base is like, how well is this dude hitting the ball? What would we expect from a guy hitting the ball that well? He's gotten bad luck. And of course, there's there's probably less impact that an opposing team could have because there's less shifting and stuff that can occur. Other guys that appear high on that list, though, this is going to be disconcerting when you drop this guy into the Seattle lineup. I think Julio's 5th in bad luck, and Cal Raleigh is like 10th. Like, these guys are experiencing bad luck, and you go, is it because I could see in being in Seattle, hitting a ball really well and it not becoming a home run being a major cause of this? And you go like,
or exit velo. I mean, exit velo.
Well, exit velo is part of the.
Yeah,
exit velo is part of the.
Very hard.
Right, right. But it's all of the things that make like a well hit ball. Like if you how fast is it coming off the bat, the launch angle, all that stuff, and their speed, and that is like this big calculation. And yeah, so like a guy that hits a ball that would be a home run in 29 parks might not be a home run in T-Mobile. And you're dropping this guy who's got this same kind of bad luck profile into there, and I'm worried. That's the one thing I'm worried about. It's at no fault of Arozarena's on his own. I think he's like, as an acquisition, the process is great. I love the trade. I love the fact that they didn't give up one of those top prospects. These are guys that you actually will never miss. Sometimes people like, when the Mariners, there's a friend of ours that said, when the Mariners win a World Series, when they traded for Luis Castillo, you'll never remember these guys. And it's like, well, when Luis Castillo may not be alive when the Mariners win a World Series at this rate. So you might not have a memory period. You got a Joe Biden brain by the time the Mariners win a World Series.
Well, it's always nerve-wracking trading with the Rays. I mean, that the Rays do a good job of developing and bringing to the majors all the guys they seemingly acquire for. But, the Mariners have made a number of trades with the Rays in the Dipoto era, and there really haven't been any that have burned them. I mean, I would say it goes both ways. They haven't had a lot of success with the guys they've acquired, and they
Sure.
also haven't been burned by the young guys they've sent over there, really. So it kind of, in some ways, it's like, okay, there's some precedent here that I think it's these two organizations want to be so similar in the way that they do
Sure.
things. The Mariners, it feels like, want to be the Rays in a lot of ways, that I can't imagine a situation where either team is really fleecing the other. Now, on the surface, I think the initial reaction to this trade was that the Mariners in some ways had fleeced the Rays. If you went and looked
Yeah.
at all the reaction from Rays fans, they didn't know who these two prospects were. And frankly, why should they? I mean, when you're talking about guys who are outside a team's top 10, even for a team or a system as deep as the Mariners, those aren't guys that you usually hear a lot about. You hear about the top 5 in everybody's system, and after that, it's kind of a crapshoot.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
they,
one thing I will say is I think we can definitively say the Rays rank prospects differently than Baseball America or whoever you're
right,
using as
right.
they're probably closer to that Fangraphs list.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that the Rays traded for those two guys, look out for those two guys to be in the majors in the next couple of years, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reality, though, I mean, to me, is like, if you're the Mariners, you cannot worry about that. You can't worry about
Sure.
what your prospects who are 3 or 4 years away are going to do in 3 or 4 years, because
Sure.
your window to win is right now. And it's going to be tough for the people that love prospects. This deadline is going to be painful, I think, because even with just a few days left, they have to go out and make another move or two. At this point, they're committed, right? They're pot committed.
I disagree with you.
Even though we all know that the Rosarena is controlled for 2.5 more years, if you make a deal like that, it signals we're going for it now. I think that's part of
disagree.
it.
I think it's
Whether you believe it or not.
No, I think it's
It
a
does.
hedge. I think it. No, I think it signals
it's
to
bad.
you. I don't think it signals to the rest of the league. I don't think that
I don't know.
if I'm that ownership group, I'm not letting them make a big splash like that is going to potentially mortgage the future of the team. And I think this is a trade that absolutely did not do that.
Yeah. Well, I
I will
don't think they're
say-
going to do that. I don't think they have to worry about that, because I don't think Jerry DePoto's job is in danger. As much as people like us don't
Sure.
want to see this guy running this organization anymore, I think the assurance he has from ownership is that, hey, man, just go out and do your job at this deadline, get us a few pieces that are going to help us. You're going to be fine. And I think we've seen it carry on for so long now that I don't think there's any alternative.
I don't know if we might be saying the same thing, and you're just saying it in a worse way than me, because I think like
Or
are
better.
you
We
saying
should
they're going
ask
to go
the
out?
listeners.
Nah, they like you more. There's more people coming from your Twitter. That's not fair. This is like my fucking Twitter is just inundated with this dude Cat Turd. I can't get rid of Cat Turd in my Twitter feed. I mute him and he still shows back up somehow. And he Mark Cuban put out a poll and he's like, I flipped your poll. This is like you flipping the answer. Maybe they'll like your side more. And also I think like yours is a more sympathetic point of view. It's like the fans want them to go all in this year. It doesn't really matter what the fans want.
Yeah.
If I'm the ownership group, this team is not good enough, in my opinion, to do that. And I think that they might go out and make a couple other minor acquisitions. And minor meaning like if you consider a Rosarena to be a minor deal, I think that along those lines, I could see them making a couple other like value adds like a Rosarena if they're available. I don't think I'm letting them trade more than maybe one guy out of that top echelon of prospects, maybe none of those guys. I'd probably lean towards none of those guys. And it's not because I don't think you can never trade those guys. It's because the Mariners have never, they're not at a point where they like actually have a reason to like go all in right now. I don't think they're all in right now. And especially I think that DFAing Ty France was not actually a move that was like giving up on this season. I think that's actually a move to win this year because he's been so bad. But I think that this team is just not good enough to do that. And not only are they not good enough, you no longer have this like big buffer of wins you stole in one-run games and close games early in the season to fall back on, where you're leading the division by a huge chunk of games. And now you're like, well, we're in a position where we have to capitalize on this. You don't have that luxury anymore. So now you're like hedging between a team that probably won't make the playoffs. Before it was like a team that'll make it to the playoffs, maybe we'll lose in the first round. if you don't do anything. Now it's like a team that's probably not going to make the playoffs, or a team that maybe gets in the playoffs and makes a short run or loses in the first round. Like that's probably the like 80
Yeah.
like
Well,
80% of your bell curve is that.
I guess the argument would be no one would have thought the Diamondbacks would get to the World Series last year, right? They were kind of in the same position the Mariners are in right now, where they're
Sure.
more or less on the outside looking in. Their division itself is very difficult. And their path to the playoffs wasn't very clear when they made a few moves. Now, going out and getting Paul Sewald from the Mariners, that's kind of a mid-level move, right? And I've actually heard people debate, just today whether a Rosarena is like a big move or a little move, and it's like I would argue that it's pretty big because he immediately becomes the best hitter on this team, especially with Julio out. I mean, if Julio's playing, then
Sure.
obviously Julio's a little bit
Well,
better.
I guess that's the other part of it too that we haven't really talked about is like, what is this team positioned like now with Julio out for probably a shorter amount of time? JP Crawford's going to miss 4 to 6 weeks. It looks like, what does this team look like at the end of that? Like it's a rough. I think the Mariners are in a position that is unenviable in that like there's almost no winning whatever they do at the deadline.
Yeah, I mean, they're in a tough spot right now because of the injuries, but anyone can go look at JP's numbers. He wasn't lighting the world on fire. I mean, that's
Another guy who, by the way, bad luck hitting the ball hard, bad luck.
yeah. Yeah, but what he brings on defense is invaluable for sure. I mean, Dylan Moore at shortstop is not the same guy. We've had this conversation before when JP was hurt. And obviously he's one of those guys who, is kind of a leader on your team too. So it always hurts to lose those types. Julio, I think, will be back a lot quicker. It seems like he's probably not going to be spending too much time on the IL, hopefully. And if that's the case, then, you're getting back an impact piece shortly. A Rosarena, I mean, yeah, in this interim before Julio comes back, it's asking a lot of any one person to help carry this lineup. Luckily, I mean, the Mariners start a series today with the White Sox, who we know they're terrible. Granted, they are facing the White Sox two best pitchers who are probably being showcased a little bit at this point coming up to the deadline. So I'm guessing they're probably going to be given a long leash to have a good outing. But at the same time, this is a team you should beat. And luckily for the Mariners down the stretch, their schedule is still pretty favorable. So even with, even when you consider all the things like they're putting together this like fringe AAA lineup right now where they're trying to weather the storm of these injuries, they have shown an ability up to this point, even with a subpar lineup, to manage out wins and to squeak out some wins. And they're in a bad stretch right now. I mean, that's what this conversation would have been without the Arozarena trades. How bad things are going and what they're could possibly do next. And now it's really, I mean, you can see just one deal like that, how much it changes the narrative quickly.
Yeah. So June 18th, the Mariners have, according to Fangraphs, 91% probability of making the playoffs. As of today, they are 38.8%. They actually got down as low as 35.4%.
Basically 1 in 3 when you consider that the Rangers and the Astros are right there.
And the Rangers are right there. They're like in the 20s, and the Astros are higher, but not a lock, obviously, because they're all very close, and there's a bunch of possible ways this could turn out. And I do think that if you could make, from my perspective, if you could make 3 of these Randy Arozarena trades, you do them. Like, there's no doubt about that. To me, this trade signals nothing because he's relatively young. He's 29, or in his age 29 season. He could be 30 by now. But he's, and there's multiple years of team control. That's like, it's, if the question is, like, yes, it works for this year. He does improve the team this year, but he also, like, it doesn't mortgage the future. In fact, there's future value. You might end up extending him or whatever. If you can make 3 more of those or 2 more of those trades and give up that caliber of prospect, I'm fine with gutting the second tier and beyond of this farm system, because I think they're actually really good. I mean, especially, I guess the other part of this is And I really am it's disconcerting to hear you say that you think there's no way Depoto's gone, because I don't know if you tell me this, because I know you occasionally, I never try to put you in a position to like admit to having inside information, while I know sometimes you do have some information that is not available to the public. Is this something that is like, do you have authority to say that, or that's your guess?
The feeling I get from people who would know better than I do is that he's not going anywhere. So, I
Motherfucker.
mean, I think it would probably take a monumental collapse. Like, not only do they miss the playoffs, but
Is this
they
true?
they absolutely shit the bed in the process. If this is true, if what you have up on your screen there is true, then we can break some news right here on this show. Yes,
Breaking news.
Jeff Passan has it now. The Mariners are acquiring Yimi Garcia from the Blue Jays for outfielder Jonathan Clase.
Yeah,
That's another great trade.
without looking it up, Yimi Garcia, tell me about him.
He's hard throwing right-hander. He was a closer a couple years ago, I think, for the Marlins. He's been more of a setup man in Toronto, but they've had some real struggles in their bullpen this year. So he's been called upon to close quite a bit for them. And yeah, I mean, the Mariners have seen him a few times in games. And, of course, he just carves up the Mariners like Swiss cheese because they can't hit anything. But good right-handed pitcher. He's like exactly what this bullpen needs. It's one of those things where, if everybody in this bullpen is healthy, if Stanek isn't, imploding one out of every 3 appearances, and Gregory Santos can be relied on to throw back-to-back games and doesn't constantly flirt with injury every time he goes out there, then you probably don't need a guy of Garcia's caliber as much. But this is a guy that really helps. I mean, this is an 8th inning guy, can be a guy that if Munoz is unavailable, he can go out and close a game for you. He's everything you want Ryan Stanek to be without the meltdowns. Stanek has so many meltdowns where he's just like, he'll walk a couple batters or throw a fastball right down the heart of the plate. Garcia is a little bit nastier with his stuff, and just a little bit more reliable in that regard. And we've obviously seen what Jonathan Clase brings to the table. It's not anything that was going to help this team anytime soon. He got a couple call-ups just to fill in when guys were in need. But, he hasn't proven he can really hit yet. And maybe he'll find that in Toronto. But at this point, you wouldn't consider this a big loss.
Yeah, I'm basically on that. I think the Class A has a potential to be I would say he has potential to be a quad A guy for sure. He's got like the classic, like relatively low power output, even at the AAA level, and then like a ton of walks and like a reasonable strikeout rate that just absolutely did not translate when he got to the majors. 43 plate appearances, not a big enough sample size to give up on the guy yet, but I'm with you. To me, it feels like another a big hedge, and I like it, like a guy. And it's also like we've talked about it. Like I think the Mariners need arms. This pitching staff, especially the bullpen, needs help. And they got it in Santos. I'm like, Stanek is interesting because every time I watch him pitch, I'm like, this guy's fucking great. And then you see a meltdown, and you're like, oh man.
He's streaky. He's very streaky, which you cannot have. Your 8th or 9th inning guys can't be streaky. We've seen that in the past with Fernando Rodney. You just need a guy who's solid and you can depend on. And Garcia is
the hazard of that is that by nature, like high leverage relievers are often very streaky. So it's tough. And you remember the failures. I mean, Rodney statistically was a great closer in Seattle. I believe. I guess I'd have to go back and look, but you remember the just like absolute meltdowns and the stressful games more than you remember the like maybe streaks of success that didn't get as much. I guess absolutely. What was I going to say? Like headlines? What do we do? We got to get some web inches or something like that. I don't know what we. Real quick, Fredo says they need to sell the team to another rich Seattleite that wants to win. Dipoto isn't the problem; it's ownership. I can agree with that overall. I do think like if they had a bigger budget, and they like reasonably could have a bigger budget, if they had a richer or more willing to spend owner, and you and I have also talked about I'm starting to fall in love with the idea of Jeff Bezos just buying every Seattle franchise and owning all of sports. He's like the Walton family of Seattle. I like that idea. But you just like you can fire a GM, you can't fire an owner. We can root for the team to sell to someone else, and that guy could be better or worse. I think what we've seen from from Dipoto is a guy who can put together a slightly above average team with an about average payroll, and that's fine. But that's not like that doesn't keep you a job for decades.
Yeah, I mean, I always think it's funny that Mariner fans have to put themselves into one camp. It's like it doesn't have to be either or. Like everybody is the when you have never been to a World Series, everybody's the problem. It's not
Sure.
that ownership is the only problem. It's not that Jerry Dipoto is the only problem. The people that want to blame everything on Scott Service amaze me because it's like if you know anything about the role of a manager in Major League Baseball right now, there's not much that they really control. You know,
Yeah.
they're a people manager. They're just there to make sure that everyone's feeling okay. Um, so it's everybody. It's a systematic failure up till this point. I mean, it's nice to see them making moves, but you know, when you're in year 9 and have made one playoff appearance, that's a total failure across the board. Whether you want to blame ownership, front office, management, or the players, you're right. It doesn't matter. Like we're arguing over nothing.
Yeah.
You are right. If you think this is ownership's fault, yes, you are correct. If you think it's the front office's fault, you are correct. If you think it's the players' fault, you are correct. We're all right, but we just want to argue with one another for no reason. It's like everybody has failed up to this point. So, you know, even in making these trades, this is a great start. You have to give, you know, for as much as I don't like Jerry Dipoto and the front office, you have to give them credit for doing what they need to do and filling positions of need as we head down a critical stretch of games for them.
Do you kind of feel like the Arozarena criticism, the criticism of that trade or the skepticism of that trade is just like people who already are ready to write off the Mariners front office, which by the way is me, but I try to be objective when something like this happens. To me, it's like very powerful to be able to say, like there's comics that I don't like, for example, and I'll be like, yeah, I don't like them, but they're funny. Like to be able to give a person you don't like a compliment, to me, is very powerful.
I mean,
and I think
it's the internet. I mean, that's just how people are. Like you have a limited.
No, but I'm not
amount of
talking about. I'm not just talking about like. Obviously, there's dumbasses that are like fans, but I'm talking about like how much confirmation bias is going into this. Like, I think Dipoto's bad, so this trade has to be bad because I think Dipoto's bad. Like from not just, I mean, like media personalities, also people who make some amount of money or have some legitimacy that are just like the Jared. Carabas or Carabas? What are we going with on this?
Carabas.
Carabas. Like that to me is such obvious confirmation bias where it's like I just don't like this dude, so I whatever he does must be bad because he did it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of that with the Mariners. I mean, I see it every day. Basically,
it's also a pretty safe position to take with the Mariners, fairly, or to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, if you're betting on them to fail, then yes, you are going to be right more often than not in all aspects. It doesn't matter what it is. You're going to be right more often than not if you bet on them to fail.
Yeah.
But I try to approach it, you know, my shtick online is that I'm like the most negative Mariners fan in the world and I make fun of them all the time. But in reality, that's not how I feel. Like when they're on a run, I am buying in, you know, and when they're down, I'm down, you know, like
we get
that's
occasional sarcastic optimism out of your Twitter account.
Yes. I mean but that's what, the way that I approach it is like people need to lighten up. And the Mariners, if you take them too seriously, all they're going to do is make you mad or sad or whatever negative emotion you want to feel. So I'm going to try to make you laugh in those times, right? And that's kind of the brand that I've built is when things are going bad for the Mariners, which they often do, I'm going to at least try to poke fun at it so maybe you feel a little bit better about it. And but there are people out there that take that shit very seriously. They don't want to laugh when things are bad.
Yeah.
And I guess my message to them would just be like, if you are taking the Mariners that seriously, you need to find a new team because they're going to let you down a lot. Maybe you even wouldn't pay attention to sports. Like in general, sports are probably not for you if you don't have a sense of humor.
When was the last time? I mean, that's to me the deal is like I'll tell this story real quickly that I might have even told on the podcast before, so I'll go through it, but. When the Seahawks lost to the Patriots, I was at a bar with some friends. We had like rented a back room. My favorite bar in the whole world, rest in peace, Copper Door. It was in Tacoma. It was like right across the street from where I used to live. And my friend had a pint glass in his hand when the interception happened, and he threw the pint glass against the wall, shattered everywhere. Yeah. And I was upset, obviously. I will say, like, I was actually like, I could feel the letdown, like I'm not saying I had clinical depression, but that did like what it made me sad for like a couple weeks. I was like actually blown away by how emotionally affected I was by that game. That's the last time I can remember. But it was also a signal to me of like, oh, you could be like this fucking idiot that's throwing a pint glass very easily if you let yourself go down this road. And also, once you have kids and a mortgage, you're like, I can't be like fighting people because they have an opinion that I
Yeah.
disagree with on the Mariners.
Yeah, yeah, that's the reality of sports, man. It's like if you're not treating this as what it is, like a distraction from reality in some ways,
Yeah.
then we all got to lighten up a little bit. But yeah, it's you can't get too worked up about the Mariners. They're kind of just a
Sure.
punching bag and oftentimes a joke.
But
And
also
it's
keep
nice.
listening to our podcast, folks. We need the listeners.
Well, I mean, I appreciate it when they try to do the right thing. Whether the right
Sure.
thing is selling or buying. Like all you want is for your team to do what is perceived to be the right thing, right? If they're in a down year, like, hey, sell off those veteran assets and go acquire talent for the future. If they're in a window where they can actually win right now, then go ahead and go out and acquire guys who will help you reach that goal. That's all you want from your team. Like whether they you want them to succeed, of course, but you just want them to be headed in the right direction, I think, most of the time. So for me, it's like seeing trades like this, or seeing them be active up to a deadline. Those are all positive signs. And it's interesting because we spend so much time, not just us, but everybody spends so much time breaking down what's going to happen leading up to a trade deadline. You hear the same names over and over again. Vlad, Luis Robert, guys like that, even guys that the Mariners had no interest in. Garrett Crochet, a pitcher from the White Sox. You hear these names over and over again. I didn't hear too much of Randy Arozarena or Yimi Garcia. The Mariners have been good at finding guys. A couple years ago when they got Luis Castillo, that wasn't a name you were hearing a ton of when they made that deal.
Sure.
They find ways to make trades that maybe aren't the most readily apparent, because I think the reality of those names that you hear, if you anticipate a guy being traded who's a big name player, the value, the cost of that guy is going to be probably pretty high, because if there's enough smoke around a guy like that, then the fire is going to be huge, right? And so
Sure.
if you want to go get Vlad, if you want to go get Luis Robert, that's going to cost you some of your best prospects in the system, top 5 guys for sure. And to go out and kind of live on those margins, as we know the Mariners love to do in all aspects, but to still get big name guys that plug holes, that's important. And that's what they're doing.
Have we exhausted Mariners talk? Are we done with Mariners talk?
Probably. We might.
I can't think of other angles to look at this from. I hope that, I'm hopeful. These two trades are hopeful to me because they're the kind of moves that I would have wanted them to make. I would be thrilled if the Arozarena trade was the most they gave up in prospect value. Because I just like, I hate to be the wet blanket. One thing I will say that I agree with you on is, though I think living on the like miracle of the Diamondbacks making it to the World Series is, I think can be silly if you to what extent, depending on to what extent you leverage yourself to like exercise that miracle. Making it to the playoffs is the only way to get through that tournament, and I do think making the playoffs period is valuable. And you don't know. I mean, if they make it to the playoffs, let's say there's what are there now? 15 teams, 14 teams. I mean, in the playoffs, is that or is it 14 now?
3 wild cards and 3 division winners, so 6 and 6, 12.
And there's 2. Oh yeah, that's right. And there's 2 byes. So 12 teams. Let's say the Mariners go in and they're a 1 in 20 shot to win the World Series, 1 in 30 shot to win. Take the ticket when you can for a reasonable price.
You have to.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw it. They had one home playoff game when they made the postseason a couple years ago. It galvanized the fan base. The entire place was packed. People were amped. That was one game. They didn't even win the damn game. It's like, if you can go back, I mean, it's a long time in the past now, but just thinking about when they were successful in the late 90s and early 2000s, the energy around the team every time out, that permeates. It's not just that you make money off the postseason run, that carries into the next year, and you can.
I think might have. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say. I mean, you saw it after that postseason run. bleeding into last season. And then you see the inverse of that this year. You have one bad off season like the Mariners had this past off season, and a lot of that energy just goes away coming into the new season. So it's important to continue that momentum. I think that's where, at least in this era, we'll call it the Dipoto era. That's where the Mariners have really struggled, is to carry out momentum. When they have a good thing going, they seemingly do a 180 and start selling guys off, and then they lose that momentum with the fan base. And that's an important part of continuing a run. I know it can be scary to, put all your chips in at one point or another, but there is an element of needing to do that from time to time. And for whatever reason, this regime has been hesitant to do that, which can be good or can be bad. I mean, you mentioned it, like, it's important to hedge sometimes. And I agree, it is important to hedge sometimes, but there are other times where it is beneficial to go in. I mean, like the 95 Mariners more or less went all in. They started trading everybody to acquire talent.
Vince Coleman, I think
Coleman,
Mark Whitten,
Andy Bennis. Andy Bennis was the big one that needed a pitcher. Mark Whitten was 96. It was the next year.
Oh, okay.
But 95, Tim Belcher, they needed they needed so many starting pitchers, so they get Tim Belcher, they get Andy Bennis, they go get Vince Coleman in a waiver deal in August. They made all these acquisitions, and they basically said, you know what, screw it. Like, we're not trading A-Rod. A-Rod's our number one prospect. We're not trading him, but everybody else is basically up for grabs, and we're going to do whatever it takes. And that made a huge difference. I mean, it saved baseball in Seattle. It carried out this 6-year run.
Sorry, I'm reading the chat. Ricky Henderson was 2001, right?
2000, yes.
2000, okay.
Maybe those 5 years were a blur for Nick. That could be the positive. It's 95 to 2000, all the same. But that there is something to be said for that, because that kicked off a 6-year run of success. They didn't make the playoffs all 6 of those years, but it was a 6-year run where they kept momentum and it kept the fans involved. And frankly, it's kept a lot of those fans involved 23 years later. A lot of the people that are here are still here thinking about that run in the past, and that's what brought them into baseball. So there is a huge importance on just building momentum, and hopefully for the Mariners, maybe this last offseason was an aberration. You can do something at this deadline, hopefully make the postseason, have a much better offseason this year than you did last year, and keep this thing rolling so that there's still energy going into the 2025 campaign.
Yeah. Okay. So we have one topic that people might not like. Before we get to that, I want to talk about I want to go through some of these chats that have been coming in, because Nick Lindsay needs attention. Why are you drinking so much water, Casey? Is it 100 degrees in Oklahoma City? One, it is literally like 100 degrees in Oklahoma City. It's so fucking hot. But I drink water all the time. I go through like a full water bottle every episode, basically.
This is all water weight,
Yeah, I'm not fat. I'm just full of water. No, the other thing is, like, I am talking a lot, like, this weekend. Like, I'm going to be on stage a bunch talking. I'm going to be driving to Dallas, probably screaming about how unfair comedy has been to me most of the trip. I'm going to stay hydrated.
I got a question for you about that. I feel like comedians and what they drink on stage varies quite a bit. There's some guys that go up there, they go hard. You see them with the mixed drink up there, you're like, damn.
Oh yeah,
this is either going to be a really good set or a really bad set. Then you have others that, like, they don't even. There's a courtesy water bottle up there on a stool for them. They don't even touch it. Which I don't know how you could talk for like an hour straight without taking a couple sips of water.
I don't understand either.
So what is your preference when you're on stage?
I go up with a full water bottle. And I usually will drink, depending on the set. If I do like a full 45 minutes to an hour, I'm like making it most of the way through that bottle. And because I'm like, I agree with you completely. I don't know how I will watch people that, like, they bring a water up, never touch it. I watch people, what blows my mind is to go up with nothing. People will go up with nothing. And my mouth does not produce enough saliva to be able to do that. Also, this is a weird one. Not a wide mouth water bottle. I don't know if Nick misunderstood something I said. There's been a lot of wide mouth water bottle talk in the chat. I don't really understand. I never said anything about a wide mouth water bottle. I got another water bottle. That's what I said. I got a full water bottle to start and it's a Kirkland Signature alkaline water, if this means anything to you, but not a wide mouth Water bottle. And then Jose Cruz Jr. was good during what years before? By the way, a lot of this stuff, Nick Lindsay, you can Google this shit. We don't need to. We don't. This isn't good radio to be. Nick. He was 96 to 98 with the Mariners, or was he?
Traded in 97.
No, I guess he only played 1 year, right? It was just 96 that
Just
he played.
97. 97. He comes up. He's the starting left fielder, basically. Everybody thought we'd solve our left field woes, which
And
we
that's
definitely
Paul
did not.
Spoljaric and Mike Timlin. Is that trade?
Yeah. 2 relief pitchers, which, boy, that was rough. Because it's not like that trade. It's not like Cruz was like Jonathan Clase is now, where he was a guy who was getting like sporadic call-ups and kind of going back and forth between AAA and the majors. No, they brought Cruz up, and he started the 97 season as their guy. That was the guy who was going to be their starting left fielder for years to come. And they gave up on him. Now, granted, he didn't. We've done him in the home run game before. I remember this. He didn't totally burn us, but he had a pretty decent career. It wasn't like he became the superstar a lot of people thought he might become. Yeah. But he was a very solid everyday player for a number of years. And frankly, that's exactly what the Mariners needed in left field for that exact amount of time.
Yeah, he's a guy that I think you because of the way the Mariners were just churning out absolute stars at that time, and his profile, and he had the bloodlines and all that shit, like, you thought that dude was going to be an absolute star. He did not turn into an absolute star, but he stuck around baseball for a very long time. All right, this is the topic that everyone can turn off if they want to turn it off, I guess. Please don't watch through because we still have the home run game at the end, but I wanted to talk about, because I've been vocal that my favorite golfer is Bryson DeChambeau. And it's not without controversy. Like, this dude invites controversy. In fact, I would say the same things that made me enjoy Trevor Bauer before his unfortunate issues, and I've yet to like fully return to Trevor Bauer. Obviously, like I'm not a Trevor Bauer fan.
Behind closed doors, I've seen your rooms. Just Trevor Bauer posters.
It's true. You remember those fat heads? It's all fat heads of. Are fat heads still around?
I actually have a Gary Payton fat head. I've never put it up on the wall. I just have it.
Let's put it up in the podcast studio.
We should do that at some point. Yeah.
That's actually a great idea. I was trying to think of what to put on those walls. Let's see if there's fat heads around. If anyone's got fat heads of Seattle sports icons, once you own a home, putting a gigantic human-sized sticker on the wall doesn't always seem like the best idea. I don't know. That's a great point, actually.
Like, a best case scenario, I guess I probably just have to like repaint this when I leave. But like worst case scenario, we're repairing some drywall here. So,
good point. Good point. So Bryson DeChambeau had Donald Trump on his channel to do. He has this challenge called Break 50 where they play from the front tees, the furthest forward tees. And the idea is like he's a long hitter. And so from those tees, can you break 50 with a scramble partner? Not even by yourself, with a scramble partner. And so, I actually didn't see a ton of controversy. I think golf as a sport probably skews more conservative than any of the sports, including baseball, which we actually we have on our list to talk about the Trump fight celebration becoming part of baseball. I don't know that we're going to get to that necessarily. I would say I don't have a problem with it because I wouldn't have a problem with anyone doing like whatever the equivalent Democratic thing would be. Also, we didn't talk about that because you were cowardly and didn't ever do the podcast since the assassination attempt. I just want to say one thing about it because we veer away from politics most of the time, especially like in the last year of the podcast. Early on, I got a little. We were drinking, and so I'd give my opinion when it probably wasn't wanted some of the time. People have been real. They're like, he got hit by a fucking it's shrapnel, not a bullet. As though like being shot at and then missing by a little bit more than you thought makes it like a stress-free situation. Like, no, I could take a nap with people shooting at me. If I was only being hit by shrapnel, then I could be fucking meditating and not move. I will say this: I don't like Donald Trump. I think he's like as a president, I have not been happy with him. If you're out there and you're conservative and you don't like to hear that, I don't think fucking Biden's any good, or I don't think any of them are any good. I think they're all owned by corporations. So it's not really a thing about. I think our fucking system's fucked. But what I'm getting at is I don't like him as a guy or a politician. I'm not a fan of his. But watching him play, this dude is a good golfer. I don't know if did you watch it? You said you would consider watching it.
I wanted to. I just did not.
Oh, this guy's always lying. You said you were gonna watch
Uh,
Shane Gillis's special. Never did that.
I don't have time. No.
He's a good golfer. He's a way better golfer than you would have thought. Like he's very good. He's hits it probably 230, but straight. Short game's good.
That's longer than most old guys. Like old guy golf.
That's longer than most guys your and my age. Like that's a pretty good fucking
that's fair.
drive.
That's fair. I mean, yeah, old guy golf is basically you. Every ball goes about the same distance. It goes like 150 yards, and it's always straight down the middle of the fairway. We've all played with or seen old guys play, and that's how they all play. Their swing looks weird, but the result is perfect every single time. They duff their way all the way up to a hole. They basically play bogey golf, but like at their age, bogey golf is amazing. Like way to go.
I mean, dude, I wish I could play bogey golf. So Trump, the putting stroke is fucking crazy if you watch it. It is funny to me to see people doing golf commentary that very obviously don't play or watch golf because they're like, I saw this one that's one of these dudes, I don't even remember his name, but like one of the guys that is just like always, he's a journalist, but he's like a propagandist basically. And he's like, oh, Trump putting on a putting clinic. And it's him just missing a bunch of putts. And I watched every single putt in like this 50-second video. And I'm like, there's one bad putt in there. Everything else is like a two-putt, like easy tap-in two-putt. And he made some long putts on the video that the guy obviously didn't include because he was trying to make some point about Trump being a bad person because he can't putt on occasion. But the stroke, if you watch the stroke, it's fucking insane. Like, have you seen even video?
I have not seen the putting stroke. I imagine it's herky jerky or something.
Dude, it's like there's so much wrist after, and it like jerks to the right. I almost want to pull it up. I'm not going to because I don't have it prepared, and we've had some.
You're working off hotel Wi-Fi, so that's
I know.
That's a risk for sure.
Whatever we've done today is a miracle that we've
I
made
gotta
it this
say,
far.
like your hotel Wi-Fi has been better than any hotel Wi-Fi I've ever experienced in my life.
Hell yeah.
Like you usually can't even like just do basic. Like you can't send an email on hotel Wi-Fi. Usually.
I don't think. I wonder if I'm on my hotspot. I could be on my hotspot. I did connect to it earlier.
Whatever.
I'm on Marriott Bonvoy Wi-Fi, baby. And
amazing. It's actually better than your home internet. I was gonna say maybe you can tap into Marriott Bonvoy at home too. That would be great.
That's so funny. I did a speed test on it earlier, and it's so much slower, but it's apparently more reliable. I guess what I will say. Not only was he a good golfer, but like. If you take the part of it out, if you didn't know all the stuff about why you might hate him politically, if he's pre-2016, if this is 2010 Donald Trump and you get to watch, dude, like a pretty good golf partner, like a fun dude. I get why people liked him. I get it. I'm again, like politically horrendous. I don't like, but he's crushing Biden in a golf match. I'll say that to start with, which is not a brave statement now but like also like he seemed like a fun time. Like they talk about presidents you want to have a beer with being like the most important, and I don't think that. But you're like
generally not. Yeah, I mean people used to always say that about George W. Bush too. It's like I mean he might not be great politically, but think about who you'd want to have a beer with. And I'm like I don't want anybody I have a beer with to be president of the United States.
No, absolutely.
All the people I know that I have beers with should not be running anything that important by any means.
I don't want anyone that wants to be president to be president. To me, that's like almost a disqualifying characteristic is that you want to be president.
This is going off the beaten path, but there's this political ad around here locally right now, and it's for this woman named Hillary Franz, and I cannot remember what she's running for. All I remember is her political ad, where it's just a video of her being like a champion figure skater as a teenager, and she's like, "Yep, that was me." And it's like it basically all she wanted to do was show everybody she used to be a really good skater. And it has nothing to do with like the position she's running for or politics whatsoever. And it's like, it's just the weirdest thing, man. It's like, I once went to a wedding where it turned into like a ballroom dancing talent show, which I might've shared that here before, but it was the weirdest thing I've ever been a part of. Like I was like, people were just sitting there. We finished dinner and you would think like after dinner at a wedding, you kind of get up and dance or like socialize a little bit. They made everybody stay in their seats so that they could do like a ballroom dancing talent show for a half an hour. It was very strange.
This was the married couple,
the
recently
married couple.
couple.
Yes, the
Oh,
married
I'm on
couple.
board with that. I thought it was like a
it was weird.
contest.
It's fucking weird. It's like no one's here to see you do your talent. Like we don't. That's not why we're here. We came here for the free meal, and like on the off chance you might say no, and it'd be like a wild event that we can tell all our friends about. No one goes home and is like, yeah, I went to a wedding this weekend. They both said yes. I mean, it was pretty normal, I guess. The food was okay. Like you want to be able to come back and be like, I went to this wedding, and you will not believe this shit. Well, anyway, this political ad is just kind of right up that same alley. It's just like, here she is figure skating. And you're like, what the fuck is this about?
I do love local political ads because so often they're in an area where it's like, it's not really like Republican versus Democrat. It's like Republican versus Republican versus Republican versus Republican. And they're all like shitting on each other for not being Republican enough. Yeah.
Maybe they should all get together and golf with a pro. All pro-am together with another golfer. See how it goes. I would.
I think that's the move.
I like watching people who are not like athletes do anything athletic. That's like my favorite thing. Maybe that's why I like watching Mariner baseball so much. It's like these guys are almost not athletes.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think like it was like watching Bartolo Colon hit a home run every time he'd like hit a drive down the middle, and also probably like dimensions probably not that different from Bartolo Colon, frankly. Like I think they probably have a similar body type. And also I bet you if Bartolo Colon will be able to throw 81 when he's 81.
Yeah, he probably can still bring it, man.
Let's say Bartolo Colon lives an unlimited amount of years. What age does he stop being able to throw his age?
Oh, I mean, so you're saying like when he turns 99, he can't throw 99 kind of thing?
Yeah, of course he can't throw 99 at 99, right. But like at what point, because I've seen him, he still like puts up videos of him throwing baseballs. He's probably throwing in like the mid 80s and he's in his 40s right now, I believe. He's not 50 yet, is he?
No, I can't imagine he is. He's got to be mid 40s. Yeah, it's only been a couple years since.
No, he's 51. Shit, but he's
holy shit.
I know that's never mind.
I guess he did have a pretty long career.
Yeah.
No, it's a good question. You could ask that question about almost any good pitcher out there. I did.
But
see
it's more
Jamie
fun
Moyer.
when the guy's a big fat guy.
Yeah, well, with Colon, I mean, he's probably going to be able to throw. Like 70, I would say, is probably maybe the cutoff. Like he might not be able to throw 70 when he gets to 70, right? But I watched Jamie Moyer throw out a ceremonial first pitch the other day at T-Mobile Park. And I was like, Jamie had a long career. He was like 47, 48 when he retired. So he's probably like getting close to 60 now, which seems wild. Like it doesn't seem like he should be that old. But also, just seeing him throw that ceremonial first pitch, he might not be able to throw his age. And he was never like a hard thrower, but like, I don't know that he can bring it anymore at all.
Jamie Moyer is 61 years old. He probably stopped being able to throw his age late in his playing career. He was never a hard thrower. So
yeah, I'm not sure he can throw 61 anymore. Like it would be a lot to ask him just to throw some BP to a bunch of kids, I would imagine.
All right, we should play the home run game because you got to get out of here at 2:30 your time. What is 4:30 my new time where I live?
What time is your show tonight? By the way, I assume you have a show tonight.
The first show is at 7 p.m. Central Time, and then by the way, speaking of which, I'm there tonight. If you're listening to this live in Oklahoma City for some reason, and if you know people in Tulsa, come out. I'm headlining Bricktown Comedy Club Tulsa on Sunday, and I'm sure, I don't know what ticket sales are at. They're so low that I don't want to ask. So come on out.
What do you even do to like pregame a show? Do you just you sit in your room all day and just like watch TV?
Well, today I had to do some work, so I did that. I would say if I did not have to do anything day job wise, I will sleep about as late as I can because I know that's like 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Like I will sleep as late as I can, and then I'll usually like try to walk around the city, get a meal, take a nap before the show, and then, yeah. I mean, I try to keep it like relatively low key, but also experience the city. I'm not going to get a lot of time to experience Oklahoma City today or this this trip, but I've like really enjoyed. I went to the museum the last time, the museum of the bombing. And by the way, I made a joke about that. They are not ready to hear jokes about that in Oklahoma
It's been
City.
30 years, man. Like
Move
time and
on.
all of that stuff. Okay.
It
yeah,
is.
okay.
I will say, I went into the thing going like, well, maybe I'll write some material, and it is so fucking tragic that you go in there and you're like, oh, this is like just. I'm like crying. Like this is terrible.
Yeah.
It's really like moving the way they have the museum set up. It's like you walk through it and it like kind of walks you through the events as you walk through it, including like they have a mock. It happened right after 9 a.m. There's a trial. They have an audio recording of a trial when the bomb went off, and you like sit in what is like a mocked up version of the courtroom and like experience. There's like animatronic shit happening. And then the like courtyard is the site of the former building, and they still have like parts of the walls up on part. It's fucking moving. Like they did a great job with the museum, and it really makes you not want to make fun of it. That didn't stop me, but yeah, I bombed real hard. That's the joke everyone makes. Is that joke bombed? You guys are used to that, and I did not make that joke. But yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, I'll try to
it's
take it into the
glamorous
city.
life. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's nice to know you're getting culture at the same time. You're experiencing
try.
museums and things. Good for you.
I try.
Okay, I got a guy. I got a home run guy for you today, and I got to run this by you. I'm not sure if we've done this guy before. I don't think so, but
we need to really put together a list. I keep saying I'm going to do it, and I never do.
I know. So here's the guy. You tell me if you think we've done him before. Carlos Delgado.
Ooh, I don't think we've done Carlos Delgado, but that's a great. Okay. When I tell you my pick, you're going to be like, "Holy shit! What a close." I'm like saying this like, "Holy shit! What a great pick!" He said it's a great pick. I don't do a good Trump. Carlos Delgado plays like I think probably the majority of his career with Toronto, but where did he end up after that? He's like time with the Mets. I want to say like Miami. I'm going to go played like 14 years. And then a guy who was probably one of the early underappreciated, like walked a ton. Probably didn't hit for as much power as you expected, but like high average, high on base. In my mind, he's a guy that like maybe never hit 40 home runs, but probably averaged like 162 game average probably has to be like in the 30s. Or maybe high 20s. Maybe a Hall of Famer. Probably a borderline Hall of Famer at man. I'm gonna say 360 home runs.
Okay.
It's fucking hurts.
It's funny looking at numbers of guys who played primarily in the 90s and early 2000s because you're like, man, if this guy played today, first ballot Hall of Famer. Absolutely. This guy is not in the Hall of Fame. His career OPS, 929. That's his career OPS. That would be like the best in baseball right now. And
what's his career on base?
His career on base is 383. Career slugging 546. I mean, those are insane numbers. He only had 2 All-Star seasons. Okay, he only had 2 All-Star seasons.
Oh my
2000,
God. Well, he
2000
he did.
Yeah.
He had the unfortunate reality that he played DH at a lot of the same time as Edgar Martinez.
And first base.
In the American
First base and DH. Yeah, he comes up. I distinctly remember him coming up in the early 90s as a catcher, but he didn't stay at catcher for long. He got moved over to first base pretty quickly. But his 2 All-Star seasons, 2000 and 2003, his OPS those 2 years, his OPS in 2000, 1134. His OPS in 2003, 1019. Like, those are crazy numbers. Those are the only 2 years he made the All-Star team. You said 360 for his home runs, right? I'm trying to keep that in the back of my mind here.
Yep.
His 162 game average for home runs, 38. So higher than what you were. Yeah, you missed that one pretty bad. He played technically 17 years, but the first 3 were minimal. You know, he goes 2 games, 43 games, 37 games in those first 3 years. So you said 14 years. You said 14 years, and he basically played 14 full seasons. Sure. He spent the first part of his career with Toronto, most of his career with Toronto. He's there from 93 to 04. Plays a single year in Florida, so you were right on that, 2005. And then he finishes his career 4 years with the Mets, from '06
Dang.
to '09. So you got all
I
three
did.
right.
That's yeah.
If we
Damn,
were
that's pretty
giving
good.
points, for naming shit like that, you would have earned some points right there. So you nailed the career. Yeah, you were off on that 162 game average. I'll give you the number now. I won't keep this from you any longer. You were off by quite a bit today. 473. So you're
Jesus,
off
and
by
not a Hall of Famer. That's
113.
wild.
Not a Hall of It's crazy.
How many
But
years with
do
40 plus home runs?
40 plus home runs. He does it in 99, 2000, 2003. That's it. And then every other year he's kind of,
Yeah, that's what I.
he
That's kind of what I thought. It's like he was just such a consistently. He never put up like he was never threatening
yeah.
records, but just like was great for so long.
This dude, I mean, his games played was solid. I mean, twice, 2000, 2001, he played all 162. And
Yeah,
throughout his career, I mean, outside of like the very last season and those first couple seasons, I mean, he was routinely up there.
that's actually
He
surprising that
stayed
he has
healthy.
that the two full 162 game seasons because he. How many games did he play at DH versus first base? I guess I would have thought that he played most like or close to half of his games at.
No, I mean, he was logging primary time at first base for every season until the very last one.
Damn,
So
I
yeah,
thought he
I
was
mean,
like a
he did play DH, here and there, but yeah,
sure.
primarily a first baseman.
Yeah,
And
I
I
think I
mean, he
made
was a
some.
big dude. He's a big dude, 6'3". So I mean, he serves a purpose at first. He's a big target. Yeah, I think the thing that really hurt him. I don't know if you remember this controversy. I want to say it was like early 2000s, but for a while there, he stopped standing for the anthem, and
Interesting. I don't remember
that
that.
was that was at a time when people did not do well with that shit. Not that they've ever done well, as Colin Kaepernick
Yeah.
can attest, but they really didn't do well. I mean, I remember in the '90s in the NBA, Mahmoud Abdul Rauf wouldn't stand for the
Yeah.
anthem for a while, and that was a big deal. And then along comes Delgado. He's kind of the next guy to do it, and then it kind of drops off until till Kaepernick takes his stance. But Delgado was one of those guys, and I think that might have hurt him just with a lot of people as far as what their perception of him was. But
That's interesting.
overall, very good player.
I don't remember that. Obviously, he plays a huge chunk of his career in Toronto, so he probably. Well, I guess he probably would be hearing. Do they play the? They probably do the American shit and
They
play
do
the
both.
anthem before.
Yeah, they do both.
Yeah, and it's every game they play both because it's
Yes.
always. Yeah,
There's
so
no other Canadian teams. Yeah.
yeah, and so he's from Puerto Rico, and
Puerto
I guess
Rico,
like
yeah.
theoretically you could be. I could see. I was trying to think of like what political movement he would be.
Yeah, I don't
get-
remember
I
the
get-
full details of it, but I just remember
I'm
it was
gonna
a
look
big
this up.
deal at the time. Yeah, we'll have to check on that. But yeah,
Yeah,
that
we'll report
ultimately,
back, folks. This is what you want to hear about the Puerto Rican discontent with the United States. We are the guys. Two white dudes. One guy's half Asian when he wants to be. That's what you want to hear. Okay, mine for you. You're gonna understand why it was serendipitous. Why we were very close to the same thought pattern. Is Edwin Encarnacion.
Oh, Edwin, man, you finally went with a recent. I assume he's a recent retiree. For all I know, he might still be out there playing ball.
He last played in. Well, I can't tell you. Recent retiree though.
Okay, yeah, recent retiree. I
I
mean,
might
I
have given
know.
you too much information.
Nah, he was on the 2019 Mariners, so I mean, and he still bounced around a little bit after that. So it's within the last like 4 or 5 years. He's kind of an interesting one. I remember he came up with the Reds, and he was one of those guys that was like kind of a big prospect, but like certainly exceeded any prospect status that he had, and became a really good player pretty fast. And really found himself in Toronto, after coming up with the Reds and then going to Toronto. I mean, that was that era where they were just taking anybody and turning them into a great hitter. They had that one hitting coach that kind of got dubbed a guru. He fixed Jose Bautista. He enhances
Yeah.
anything that Edmund Encarnacion could do. And he did it with a couple other guys too. But Encarnacion, obviously he was putting up numbers in Toronto. By the time he got to the Mariners, I mean, that was a classic Mariner move, coming here in 2019. I mean, I remember that trade was wild because it was like, I can't remember exactly who they gave up, but they acquired Carlos Santana for like 5 minutes and then flipped him for Edwin Encarnacion. And just a weird sequence of events that brought him here. And then he's not even here for that long because they ultimately give up on him mid-season. But I think I want to say we got it from Cleveland. Cleveland was involved for a little bit there. I know he played for New York after the Mariners. he might have been in Baltimore at some point. I mean, this guy after the Toronto days, he really kind of floated around. It felt like, but man, I want to say he probably came up around like I don't have an exact date on him. Maybe like 2008 ish. You know, some of these guys I know for a fact. I'm like, they came up in 99. I remember it like it was yesterday, but not him. So he probably played about like full seasons, maybe like 13, 12 or 13. And he was probably one of those guys in his heyday. I think he led the league in home runs a couple times. So, but that was in the era where, you know, you're getting down into the 40s to be your home run leader. So, you know, he probably had a season where he was even right up around 50, I would guess. But his average for 162 games is probably like just like maybe around 35 ish. And if he played about 12 years at 35, 12 times 30, that would be 360. And then you add the 5, this is 60 more, so like 420. Is he over 400? Ah, man. I'm going to say 390.
All right. Was that an adequate no sell on the
Pretty good. Pretty good. You did a good job keeping a poker face that time.
So you got a couple things really right. 162 game average, exactly 35.
Nice.
Never led the league in home runs, although
okay.
I would not have been surprised to find that out. He did have a couple seasons, 2 seasons with over 40 home runs, 42 home runs in 2012 and 2016. I did forget about the Blue Jays just turning like projects into all-stars over and over and over again. And I guess I forgot how like mediocre as a first baseman he was in Cincinnati, or as like an offensive first baseman. I don't think he was ever the defender that probably Delgado was, for example.
No, he came up as a third baseman originally, and then got quickly shifted over to first.
Yeah, that's a pretty common story.
Yeah.
Okay, so and then he plays less of his career in Toronto, but obviously kind of takes over the mantle from is it directly? No, not quite directly, but like he's pretty shortly after the end of Delgado's time in Toronto. They end up with another first base DH, big dude. Not a bad showing from you, I will say that. You started to circle around it. I thought you were going to stick this one also. 424 home runs.
I should have if I would have trusted the process fully, I would have been right on 420. I mean, the number I came to was 420, but I didn't think he was that high. I figured there was some seasons in there. You got to account for like injury or, you know, just general subpar performances later on. But damn, should have stuck with it.
Also, MVP votes in 5 seasons, 3-time All-Star, great player, Edwin Encarnacion. But by the way, I think we were close. We got to go back through these years. I think what I want to do is release the home run games as their own clips and just make a playlist on YouTube. But this would require a lot of work that I probably am not going to do. So, if someone out there, an enterprising young person, wants to do that, please do. That's the end of the podcast, I think, because you got to go. I got to pee, and I drank all that water. Now I got to pee. I can't believe it. The whole world is collapsing on me.
Well, enjoy your time in that hotel. That's
thank you.
That's always fun. Yes.
Also, by the way, watch my special "Do Not Shake" on YouTube, and come see me. Go to CaseyMcLeanComedy.com. I'm going to try to keep my calendar updated for future dates. And thank you for watching the podcast. Casey McLean Comedy and the Casey McLean on Twitter. All right, Alex SSN. He's fucking giving you the silent treatment, folks. He's fucking killing you.
I thought we were done. My bad.